Hey, good evening. It's Tuesday night, so we are here with the Paranormal Lens. My name is Chad Thomas. That is Jamie Widener.
This guy right here. Yeah, that's me.
We are part of Jotnik's Paranormal. We're here every Tuesday night talking about the paranormal and things like that. So, Jamie, how are you? How's your week going?
It's good. It's busy. It's a holiday week, right? So Thursday's 4th of July, and therefore we have a short week, and that means 4 days of doing 5 days worth of stuff, and
then you have plenty of time at home to sit around and just prop your feet up, right?
yeah, not that either. So lots of projects, things to get completed. It's normal day of normal life. So what about you? What's going on?
Well, I'm getting ready to go. There's Todd and Carmela.
Evening.
I'm getting ready to go do my summer camp for a week. Take over a kitchen and feed 120 people 3 to 4 meals a day.
Awesome. How many years have you been doing this now?
Well, I want to say close to 17 because we're almost 18 because Zoe wasn't here when I first did it.
Wow. Yeah.
So it's been a long time. You
started when you were 12, right? And then
we'll go with that. Yeah. So anyway, but it's a great experience. I love volunteering, and it's a good cause, and a week of sacrifice is definitely worth it. I get more out of it than I put into it. It's one of those deals. So
I know exactly what you mean. Yeah.
So and let's see, Jim's with us tonight.
Good evening, Jim.
So how about that investigation at Boobies the other night?
Dude, I'll tell you what, there is nothing more fun than investigating during a thunderstorm. Yeah. if not just for ambiance, right?
Uh-huh.
We can deal without the pelting rain and all that stuff, but
right.
The thunder, lightning, ambiance of an investigation, but the energy that it brings as well. I think in all the 3 sessions that we had, in all the 3 spaces that we do it in, that I have not heard in a long time as many reports of activity in each place all at the same time, in different floors, as what I heard Saturday night as we kind of did a recap of each session.
Right.
And I saw something that I've never seen before myself.
Mm-hmm.
In the second session, Melissa and I were standing in the ballroom toward the front of the building, and the group had gone to the back to the area around Ani and Tekla's room.
That was the first session because I was in that group upstairs. Yeah,
right, sorry, but they're all blended together. Sorry. Yep. We're standing there, and we're near the bar that's at the front of the room, and we both saw a very small or short in height, dark, shadowy thing move from the table area outside the bakery to the stairs. And we both looked at each other, and Melissa said, "What was that?" And I said, "What the F was that?" And then, of course, went right out to try to figure out what it could have been. And we tried to replicate and, just move around with shadow play and such, and then open the glass door that swings there and coming down the stairs, standing on the stairs. Where we saw it coming from was a very unique location, being it was toward the area at the back of the room where you guys were.
Mm-hmm.
We couldn't replicate it. So we both went, wow. And of course, as we're standing there talking about other things, we didn't have cameras up or anything ready to capture it. And it didn't come back at the time that we stayed there to wait for it and watch for it. So, and I said something interesting to Melissa, at least I thought it was interesting because, I said it, but as much as we were there in that moment and saw that thing happen, whatever it was, and I'm saying thing because we can't describe it. How many times does stuff like that happen when we're not looking?
Yep.
And that kind of, I stumbled on that for a while, just try to comprehend it. Like the idea that, stuff happens all the time, right? We believe at least. And, those who set up cameras and like security cams and stuff have all that long range opportunity to capture things. We're there for windows of time. And, like we always say, stuff doesn't happen on demand. So, but in this case, something did happen, and we just didn't get a chance to document it.
Yep. Well, and that was the second shadow because Jerry and Missy saw a shadow earlier when they came in, and
that's right. Right. And there was a guest was hanging out in the bar area before the investigation. We remember we were missing a lot of people,
right?
So I found them in the Eloise bar, and one of them claimed to have seen a cat in the bar, and there was a cat in the bar or in the building for that matter. We had to be they were inside, outside, dumpsters in the back of the building. Who knows? Feral cats, whatever. She was like, no, that was in the bar, and it just walked over there and went away. So interesting.
Well, and my group saw several people saw shadows. We were using a laser grid. They saw shadows, tripwire, like everything was going off. It was just, and it was high. It wasn't just little blips. It was high responses, and it was great. Cool. So it's a good experience for those investigations.
That was a fun night all around, I think. So okay, let it rain more often.
Mm-hmm. So, well, as Todd just brought up, we're here to talk about Eastern State Penitentiary. So, yes. So maybe we should move on to that.
That's a good cue. Thanks, Todd.
So, in the Paramount District of Philadelphia, you will find a very large Gothic-looking structure that takes up an entire city block. The building falls well within the 135 square miles that make up the city of Philadelphia. So,
Chad, I'm sorry to interrupt you. It might just be me, but I'm having a little trouble with your audio.
Okay, is that any better?
Louder, yes. It's a bit robotic, but much better.
Okay. So we'll see how it goes.
Okay. Sorry to interrupt.
No, it's okay. I appreciate you letting me know. The building falls well within the 135 square miles that make up the city of Philadelphia. Surrounded by busy streets and skyscrapers, Eastern State Penitentiary seems out of place in the city of brotherly love. If we were to travel back 175 years to an earlier Philadelphia, things would have looked much different. Francis Lane, now known as Fairmont Avenue, was the northern boundary of the city. So that's that's that top line there on that map. Past this northern boundary was 10 acres of elevated farmland that had been used as a cherry orchard. In 1821, funding was approved to build a new prison. Between 1821 and 1822, the area was purchased, and John Haviland's design was chosen from 4 submissions to be built for the prison to be built. The structure was scheduled to hold 250 people. The first phase was finished in 1829 and received its first prisoner on October 25th of that year. The building was spectacular, though it looked more like a 17th century European castle than a prison. Can you imagine what it must have been like to see this building rising up from farmland? A neighbor, local, or prisoner, this sight of the structure must have been daunting. At the time, it was one of the largest and most expensive structures to be built in the United States. But how did we get here, and what was so special about this prison? To understand, we have to look back at the jails and prisons before Eastern State was built. Most of the jails in the late 18th century were large holding pens. Prisoners were broken up into groups of men, women, and children. The prisoners would sort things out between themselves. Physical abuse and mutilation happened all the time. Sometimes at the hands of other prisoners, other times it was the guards themselves. In 1787, a group met at the home of Benjamin Franklin wanting to set up a better system for prisoners. Now, this is a mouthful. The group was called the Philadelphia Society for Alleviating the Miseries of Public Prisons. Apparently, snappy
acronym for that.
I was going to say, apparently snappy acronyms weren't a thing at the time. The goal was to fix the problems of European and American prisons. According to the Eastern State website, Dr. Benjamin Rush spoke on the society's goal. To see the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania set the international standard in prison design, he proposed a radical idea: to build a true penitentiary, a prison designed to create genuine regret and penitence in the criminal's heart. The concept grew from the Enlightenment thinking, but no government had successfully carried out such a program. So how does one build a prison that makes someone seek penitence and change their ways? John Haviland thought a combination of grandiosity and dread would work. The stone walls rose high, crowned with battlements. Its unique radial design, with cell blocks fanning out from a central hub, was revolutionary, intended to allow for better surveillance, can't say that word today, surveillance, and control of inmates. Each cell was a solitary confinement chamber. complete with a small exercise yard. The original design only allowed entry from this outside exercise yard. The design included a small pass-through for food and waste to be exchanged to the main hallway. Now, this was changed in the next design phase, and a metal door covered by a thick wooden door to suppress sound allowed entry into the main corridor from the cells. Prisoners were kept in total isolation, unable to see or communicate with one another. Exercise times were staggered so no adjoining cell would be outside at the same time. The idea was to force introspection and repentance, but the reality was far darker. The silence that enveloped Eastern State soon became its most haunting feature. So I can't imagine, like, you imagine a 2-year prison sentence and not seeing or speaking to anybody. Yeah. If you were being moved around inside the prison from like a cell to like an infirmary place, you had a hood put over your head so you couldn't see anybody. And you also didn't know where you were in the prison either, but it's just, I can't imagine that. So,
well, but it goes to the penance part of it, and the solitary introspection, introspectiveness of your time. And I apologize if I start flapping around here. I've got the biggest horsefly I've ever seen.
Okay,
buzzing me. He's circling the tower.
So that was the bad part about it. But the amenities of the cell were state of the art at the time. Each cell had a sink with running water over a toilet, which was a common prison thing nowadays. The toilet was remotely flushed twice a week. There was also a small Eye of God skylight allowing light to enter into the cell, but it also reminded the prisoner that God was always watching. Another amenity was a curved pipe in the corner of the cell that hot water was pumped through in the winter to provide centralized heating. Now, something interesting to keep in mind is Andrew Jackson moved into the White House in 1929, the same year that this prison opened. He had no indoor plumbing, and coal stoves were used to heat the White House at the time. So this was
1829, correct, sir?
Yes, 1820. Sorry.
Okay. Yeah, if we didn't have hot water in the White House by then, we were in trouble.
True. Okay. So, the first prisoner to be confined to Cherry Hill State Penitentiary on October 25th of 1829 it was known as Cherry Hill State Penitentiary at first. It became known as Eastern State Penitentiary since it served the Eastern District of Pennsylvania. So that's where we get that name. According to the timeline notes on the Eastern State's website, Charles Williams, prisoner number 1, burglar, light black skin, 5 feet 7 inches tall, foot 11 inches, scar on nose, scar on thigh, broad mouth, black eyes, farmer by trade, can read. Theft included 1 $20 watch, 1 $3 gold seal, 1 a gold key. Sentenced to 2 years confinement with labor. Received by Samuel R. Wood, First Warden, Eastern State Penitentiary. Now, as Charles was placed in his cell, he was forced to bow as he went through the low door. Was the low door used as another religious nod, forcing the bow as part of the penitence, or was it to make it difficult for the prisoner to attack the guard while exiting and entering the cell? Or was it a combination of both? As the prison filled, the air grew thick with despair. Inmates entered its iron gates with a mixture of dread and hope. Hope that the solitude might offer them a chance to redeem themselves. However, many found the isolation unbearable. The complete lack of human contact drove some to madness. In 1831, cell block 3 was completed. This was the last of the original single-story cell blocks. Construction began on cell blocks 4, 5, 6, and 7. So this is what we were talking about off air a little bit, Jamie, that it was built in phases and they had prisoners, it was dealing with all that. 4, 5, 6, and 7 were designed as 2-story units since the number of detainees kept rising. In this same year, Eastern State received its first female prisoner. In 1832, William Hamilton, inmate number 94, lowered himself from the roof of the building to escape. He was captured and attempted to escape again in 1837. Hamilton's assigned work duty was that of waiter to the warden. So he must not have liked his job. In 1837, the prison was complete. Still under the supervision of the original architect, John Haviland, it now covers 11 acres and has 450 cells. The cost of the building was around $780,000, considered one of the most expensive buildings at the time in the United States. Converted for inflation, that would be equivalent to $25.5 million today. Charles Dickens, upon visiting the penitentiary in 1842, remarked on the oppressive silence and the suffering it caused. He described it as a slow and daily tampering with the mysteries of the brain, and lamented the psychological toll it took on the prisoners. His observations would prove prophetic. He eventually wrote the following about the system known as the Pennsylvania System of Prisoner Discipline. The system is rigid, strict, and hopeless solitary confinement, and I believe it and its effects to be cruel and wrong. In the 1850s, Eastern State hired its first full-time teacher. The central rotunda was photographed by William and Frederick Langenheim. Samuel Coperthwaite, inmate number 2954, created a famous lithograph that shows how much open space is around the facility. Not only was Eastern State Penitentiary a prison, but it became a tourist attraction. In 1858, over 10,000 people visited the facility. This was the most ever until history tours began in 1994. 1877 brought more construction. 4 new cell blocks were added between the existing ones. This was the first set of cells built without the exercise yards. In 1911, construction on cell block 12 was completed. This cell block was wedged between blocks 6 and 7. Constructed of reinforced concrete, it was a 3-story addition. Each floor contained 40 cells. Skylights were done away with at this time, and narrow slit windows were used instead. Gone also were the high arched ceilings. By the mid-20th century, the penitentiary's original purpose was questioned. The rigid system of solitary confinement had proven to be more harmful than helpful. Reformers urged a more humane approach to incarceration, and gradually the harsh practices were abandoned. By 1913, this system was officially abolished. In 1923, all of the female prisoners were relocated to a facility in Muncie, Pennsylvania. In July of the same year, Leo Callahan and 5 other inmates escaped by scaling the east wall. All of Callahan's accomplices were recaptured, but Leo Callahan remained at large. He was only one of 4 people to escape and not be recaptured in the 142 years the prison operated. So that's a pretty good record.
Sure.
Things changed in 1924 for the prisoners. In January of that year, prisoners ate in group dining rooms. Tablecloths were used on holidays and Sundays to boost morale. On August 12th of the same year, Governor Gifford Pinchot sentenced Pep, the cat-murdering dog, to Eastern State Penitentiary. One story is that Pep killed Pinchot's wife's cat. Another newspaper article stated that the governor donated his dog to also increase morale. 2 years later, cell block 14 was started. Most of the space between cell blocks was gone, and that was what was originally designed to hold 250 people, now holds 1,700.
Wow.
In 1929, one of the most notorious inmates was held at Eastern State Penitentiary. Al Capone, the infamous gangster, resided in one of the cells. Now, unlike other prisoners, Capone's cell was furnished with fine rugs, a radio, and paintings, a stark contrast to the barren cells of the rest. Despite these luxuries, the walls of his cell could not keep out the ghost of his past, and Capone often claimed to hear the haunting cries of those he had wronged. Capone was not alone in his torment. Willie Sutton, a famous bank robber, was another notable inmate. Known for his numerous escape attempts, Sutton spent much of his time plotting ways to break free from the oppressive confines of the prison. Despite his cunning, he was eventually recaptured each time. adding to the lore of Eastern State's inescapable walls. One notable attempt in 1945 had Sutton working with Clarence Kleindienst, or Kleiny, and 11 other men. Kleiny was a prison plaster worker, and they tunneled out to the corner of Fairmont Avenue and 22nd Street. Kleiny had 2 years left to serve on his original sentence at the time. His 2 hours of freedom cost him another 10 years. Most of the others were caught within a few minutes. It was also in 1945 that the Pennsylvania legislature suggested closing Eastern State. In my research, I found a whole section on this escape attempt and the tunnel, like details of the tunnel. It's really interesting. I would suggest if you have time, look into it. It was the whole story of them taking dirt out in their pockets and dumping in the prison yard, just like the movie The Great Escape. It's pretty cool. So in 1961, the cell blocks were desegregated. Also in 1961, Eastern State saw its largest riot. John Klausenberg tricked a guard into opening the cell of Manuel Madrigal. The two overpowered the guards, ensuing the riot. It took a large force of guards, local police, and state troopers several hours to reclaim the prison. This furthered the discussion of closing the facility down. In 1965, Eastern State was designated a National Historic Landmark. In January of 1970, most of the prisoners were sent to a facility at Greater Ford, Pennsylvania. Most of the mechanical systems were in disrepair, but the walls and the paint were in pristine condition. Yeah. In 1971, Eastern State closed its... sorry, I jumped there. After a riot at the Holmesburg County Prison in Philadelphia, prisoners were held at Eastern State Penitentiary while repairs were being made. An interesting note here, Holmesburg Prison was modeled after Eastern State Penitentiary. The same spoke design, the fortress, everything like that. It had its own issues, and that may be another episode that I want to dig into. I almost had an opportunity to investigate there, but I can go into that more if I do an episode on that prison. In 1971, Eastern State closed its doors for good. The once feared fortress fell into disrepair. Its halls echoed with the memories of the past. The building became a target for vandals, and nature came to reclaim its territory. Ivy crept up the walls, and animals made their homes within the crumbling cells. Believe it or not, what I just shared was the nice side of Eastern State. Most of this information was found on Eastern State's website. What wasn't found there, but on other sources, were stories of suicide, murder, and torture. I discussed how solitude was used as a punishment, and that meant no talking. If a prisoner couldn't abide by that rule, there was a punishment in place called the iron gag. In 1833, Matthias Macumsey was caught trying to talk to a neighbor. Matthias was shackled with his hands behind his back. The cast iron gag was placed over his tongue and secured to the shackles. The guards left him alone for an hour. When they came back, he was dead. Apparently, the gag had sliced his tongue so bad he bled to death. Mental illness was thought to be a problem at Eastern State. I wonder why.
Yeah.
Early doctors believed mental illness spread through the body via blood circulation. They thought that they could cure insanity by simply making sure blood didn't pump through the body. The best way to do this? Restricting all movement. A device called the MAD chair was created so inmates could be strapped in so tightly it was literally impossible to move a muscle. They would be forced to sit in the chair for days without food. Restricting the blood flow inevitably caused damage to the body, and inmates often needed limbs amputated after spending time in the MAD chair. Warden Herbert Hardboiled Smith was in charge of the prison during the 1920s and 30s. He was known for being a fierce reformer, and judges only sent people to Eastern State who needed Smith's skills. During his reign, solitary confinement was phased out by the state, and 2 or 3 prisoners were assigned to each cell. Smith came up with another punishment called the water bath. In this punishment, inmates' heads were dunked in an ice water bath. Then they were hung from the cell walls for the night. During the winter months...
they were put out to dry.
Okay.
Yeah, I get it. All right.
But during the winter months, when this was especially popular, prisoners would often not make it through the night as ice formed over their face. So with all these things that I presented, do you think there would be ghosts that haunt Eastern State? I think we know the answers to that. Over the years...
just one. I don't know.
Yeah. Over the years, guards, prisoners alike reported strange occurrences. The most common tale is that of cell block 12, where disembodied voices and cackling laughter are often heard echoing through the halls. Doors will slam shut on their own, and shadowy figures were seen flitting past the bars. One guard, Thomas Burke, recounted a chilling experience from a cold winter night in 1946. As he made his rounds, he heard the sounds of footsteps behind him. Turning, he saw nothing. The footsteps continued, growing louder and more insistent. Panicked, Burke quickened his pace, but the phantom steps followed. It was only when he reached the central rotunda that they ceased, leaving him breathless and terrified. Prisoners were not spared either. Many claimed to have seen spectral faces peering at them from the darkness of their cells. Some even spoke of malevolent forces that seemed to delight in their torment, whispering sinister words in their ears at night as they tried to sleep. The story of Joseph Taylor, an inmate in the 1930s, became one of the most infamous tales of hauntings. Taylor, who was convicted of murder, claimed to be visited by the spirit of his victim. He would awake in the middle of the night, drenched in sweat, screaming about a shadowy figure standing at the foot of his bed. Despite the guards' attempts to calm him, Taylor's paranoia grew, leading to his eventual suicide in his cell. The prison yard is also known for activity. People have felt cold spots on hot summer days, heard noises, and even seen inmates strolling the yard, even though no one has been held there since 1971. The prison has been investigated by several notable teams. Ghost hunters investigated the prison in an episode that aired in 2004. There is some footage from the cell block number 12 that shows a moving, shadowy shape that corresponds to the stories of a ghost prisoner in that corridor. It looks like something is at first crawling towards the camera before standing up, and then it turns away and runs down the hallway. I think you had mentioned that bit to me, Jamie.
Yeah, that one always stood out to me as far as rememberable evidence. It's crazy. I mean, you can't explain it. It doesn't make sense what you're seeing.
Nope, not at all. Eastern State raises money every year by doing an annual Halloween event. Actors dressed as inmates and guards recreate the eerie atmosphere of the prison's past. Amid the stage scares, some visitors have reported genuine paranormal experiences. One guest named Sandra recounted feeling a cold hand grip her shoulder, only to turn and find no one there. Another, Mark, described seeing a figure in an old-fashioned prison garb vanish into thin air. The hauntings of Eastern State Penitentiary are more than mere ghost stories. They are the echoes of lives interrupted. The penitentiary's legacy is one of both historical significance and spectral mystery, a place where the past and present intertwine in a dance of shadows and light. Today, Eastern State stands as a testament to the evolution of the American penal system and a reminder of the human capacity for both cruelty and redemption. Its stone walls bear witness to the suffering and repentance of thousands who have passed through its gates. Today, visitors walk through the narrow corridors, peering into tiny cells where men once lived in solitary silence. Some of them come seeking history, other thrills, and still others brush with the supernatural. As they move through the dimly lit passageways, many feel an inexplicable chill, as if the spirits of the past are still present, watching and waiting. Unfortunately, that is the closest you're going to get to an investigation at the Eastern State Penitentiary. Yeah. With the exception of the Halloween event, the board of directors at Eastern State has decided to distance themselves from the paranormal. In June of 2017, the board adopted the following mission statement. Eastern State Penitentiary Historic Site interprets the legacy of American criminal justice reform from the nation's founding through the present day, within the long abandoned cell blocks of the nation's most historic prison. Being a paranormal investigator, at first this seems very frustrating. It is reportedly one of the most haunted prisons, and it is so close to our home, but just still out of reach.
Yep.
I thought about going on a tour and sneaking in a voice recorder to see what I captured, but I realized that is being as disrespectful to them as some of the things that bother me about other investigators.
Right. Yeah,
Eastern State's Penitentiary, Eastern State Penitentiary's innovative preservation, interpretation, and public programs will move visitors to engage in dialogue and deepen the national conversation about criminal justice. That is the vision the board has set forth for now. Do I think they both can be done successfully? Yes, but that isn't my choice. But I think as long as we're working to preserve Eastern State, they're doing a good thing. Losing places like this to neglect happens way too often. Though it isn't possible to go there with equipment and have an investigation, that doesn't mean it isn't possible to have a paranormal encounter there. I'm planning on visiting in the near future with my camera to take pictures. Who knows what I might catch? In the future, there may be an opportunity to promote the board's mission and vision while at the same time investigating the paranormal. I think it's all about respect. And the more paranormal investigators can show that we want to be respectful, the more places like this will be willing to open up their minds to the opportunities. So, if you're interested in Eastern State, it's open most days for tours. It's closed the major holidays, Thanksgiving, Christmas Eve, Christmas, and New Year's. They have many tour options, and they also have their Halloween programming. So that's my story. There's a lot to talk about in there.
Yeah.
But what do you think, Jamie?
Well, I mean, if you're going to ask me if it's paranormal, and I'm going like, hell yeah. I've heard many. I've done some research on the site as well, and all your reporting is true and accurate to everything I know as well. I mean, stories, the encounters. There's been before the official closure of the site to the public, for lack of a better way of saying it. There were a lot of programs that were able to get in and document a lot of stuff. Ghost Hunters was one, but there were many others. So that part of it goes to the respect part that you speak to. But what I think they're afraid of, and it's the same problem that I think we deal with at the brewery and any other place that has a public event option, is you don't know what you're going to get when you release the general public to the place. You don't know what the person may have brought with them as far as I'll call it paranormal baggage, stuff. You don't know what condition those folks are in as far as sobriety, of all kinds of things, so there are a lot of things can happen. Liability is huge. This is an old facility. Things don't work well in it. There are things that are, challenges to get around in places you can't go. People always want to go to them anyway, so who breaks the rules? A lot of stuff, a lot of management problems. So I get it. You just want to be the one group that gets there, though. Still, So,
well, up until the early 2000s, I think their tours were required to wear hard hats. That's how bad the place was. So yeah,
I can say this, and I don't know. I think actually this picture you've put there right now is kind of what I experienced. So the first time that I remember going past the facility was like on the street, I guess where the main gate is, whatever that is. And I didn't realize where I was until I realized what it was on my left side wasn't changing. Like it's how big it is,
right?
Like there's a wall and there's still a wall and I'm driving. So I'm not really, looking everywhere, and it's Philly, so you kind of have to get on a swivel. But I realized that I'm not, the wall isn't stopping.
Right.
I know I've passed the block already. And then that's when I looked over and realized there it is. Like, oh shit, there it is. That moment. So it is a massive facility too, which I think is kind of taken for granted sometimes because you can't see all of it at once in any entirety unless you're from an elevated position like this drawing is, or a drone would be or something. But you just don't get the scale until you're there.
Right.
It's amazing. I want to step back a second. Todd and Carmela brought up a good point here a little while ago. I didn't bring it in yet just because I'm going to wait to this moment. But, working in a prison for the past 25 years, the environment not only affects the incarcerated, it affects all who work there. I've talked with officers who have shared similar stories of activity. it's everybody. It's the
Mm-hmm.
kitchen staff, it is the officers and the guard staff, it's the management and all the office personnel, it's the facilities guys and girls, whomever, anybody who's
Right.
in the location at at that time can be affected by an opportunity that might present itself. And the stories from this is like generational stories now, 150
Right.
years. So, that's a long, long time for a facility to be operational. And I appreciate that, Todd Carmel. I really do, because that's the thing that's taken for granted. And we've talked a lot about locations where I want to go back to Rockford Plantation.
Mm-hmm.
The stories that were presented there were largely from the staff,
Right.
because they were making the effort to document them through the years, because otherwise it's just lost. It's anecdotal without documentation. Even with documentation, I guess it's anecdotal, but the idea is if we don't document it, it's just a thing.
Right.
And it's amazing when you start looking at a compilation of things, and then the longevity, the list gets longer and longer, the stories get longer and longer, but there's patterns in them.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really what's cool about that, when you can do that, because you have then firsthand experiences that are over and over again. So you start to see where the patterns are, where the locations of the opportunities are, and things like that.
Right.
Streamlines, it's a big place to wander around like all night in, right? Like anything else, any of the other larger, like the Waverly or Trans-Allegheny, even West Virginia Penitentiary, where we were a little while ago.
Mm-hmm.
It's a big place to wander around, just without a plan. So
it
helps to have some kind of documentation to understand the areas of influence to pursue things at. Although that doesn't mean something's going to happen just while you're walking toward the bathroom either. So,
right.
Just never know.
Or while you're underneath it.
As it was for us. Yeah, that's a great point too, Jim. And I'm glad Bert's here. I was hoping you were making for your perspective.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of, anytime there's a lot of sorrow, guilt, anger, frustration, those are all energies that can attract other things,
Mm-hmm.
Obviously there's a lot of death in these places as well. Do we have a head count for the losses?
I do not. Now, Eastern State was not a facility that put people to death, so I did find that out. But there were at least 3 or 4 guards that were killed, and plenty of inmates who just died naturally. A lot of other things, that happens in prisons. So,
yeah, that's the thing we don't think about. When you get a life sentence, that means you're going to die there,
right?
Without some effect happening,
right?
With a change of your sentence. But the reality is that you are going to pass in the facility, and that's what's expected to be your sentence. You're done.
The facility did have a death row, but it wasn't that they were put to death there. So
right. Okay. They're waiting to be transferred elsewhere for.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah. I had no idea before researching this, the whole solitary confinement, that was how every prisoner was treated. And it was so interesting that it just blew my mind that was considered a way of making people better.
Yeah.
And it actually made them worse. And they were wondering why mental illness was an issue. Well, they were forcing it, and they had no clue. But
it's kind of the sign of the times, though. That was, and how belief systems have changed and processes have changed through the years. But you're talking, if you go back to the 1820s, up to the 1920s, a lot of things were different.
Yeah,
our understanding and our belief of what is cruel and unusual drastically changed.
Mm-hmm.
And then as you move up to the 70s, to the end, it's again another leap of time, but it's another significant change. Things were still, by that point, though, the facility was in such bad disrepair that everything was cruel and unusual, because nothing worked, and it was just outdated and beyond its lifespan, life expectancy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Heather, I'm sure that you would definitely feel something. I think most people who aren't sensitive, who walk in there, feel things. So I can't imagine what you would feel or I would feel, or that seems like it'd be overwhelming.
Yeah. And I had, and Heather, you'll appreciate this because you were there. You have video proof, but when we were at West Virginia, we had the opportunity to be locked in a cell momentarily, at least. But I stood inside a cell and watched that door slide shut, and it for me, it felt uniquely different. It felt worse. And being in there just for a few moments till the guy who was giving us the tour let us back out.
Mm-hmm.
I did not like that feeling at all. And I'm not saying I'm scared straight because maybe you never know, but dangerous, Chad Thomas, I'm telling you. But it's one of those things where you don't get that until you get there. And
right.
And how many cells are stacked and how many are in the row, and just the amount of bodies and mass that would be there all at that same time. And this is open cells, so you're not quiet. It's not. I imagine the din of noise just overall would be overwhelming,
Mm-hmm.
especially to anybody who would have any kind of sensory challenge.
Right.
It would be maddening, literally.
Right.
So the mental health challenges would escalate.
Well, just touching on that quickly, Jamie, it was so quiet. It was like church-like. It was the hallways were built to look like and feel like a cathedral. It was that scaring. I mean, you're talking about Quakers who basically built this prison, not that they believed in incarceration or any of that, but you had to deal with it somehow.
Yep.
And so they figured, well, God would deal with it.
Yeah,
but so they're
right.
Yep. So to answer Todd and Carmela's question here, I didn't come across anything. I'm not saying there wasn't, but they didn't have a lot of room to bury people, to be honest with you, once they started just building, between wings and all that. So it was a lot of people on a small, 11 acres. Like, I can't imagine. I mean, 1,700 people.
Think about where that location is now. In the original slides, we were talking about showing where it was in proximity to old Philadelphia of the day,
mm-hmm.
when it was originally conceived and constructed. Now it's in the heart of the city. Like, everything's around it.
Mm-hmm.
And without it being on the National Historical Registry, it's prime real estate. And that really is one of the only things that's keeping it from being demolished and removed, essentially, and then rebuild on with whatever modern thing we need or want. That would take this completely off the map and gone.
And thank goodness for that historic registry, because there's so much that would be gone. So
I agree. And it's amazing that it's it's able to be there in the middle of a city like this. It just it's out of place, completely out of place.
Yep. So, and it wasn't at the time, like you said, it was it was on the outskirts of town. It was a farm. Right. So,
I tell you this: I was in the Lancaster County Prison a little while ago for a visit and a tour kind of thing, and they gave the history of that. And as it was built then, which was in the early 1900s, it was the edge of Lancaster City, and now it is no longer. It's close to it still, but it's still we've expanded. And there was intentionality of Reservoir Park being installed across the street from it to keep some green space, so it wasn't all just built up on housing at the prison. Everything else on the other 3 blocks is building housing right around it, in row homes and so forth, so it's tight. But it's amazing how, and that's another castle, cathedral kind of place that's been totally renovated through the years. But there was something about making these places be imposing, from the outside, not for those within, but for those without, to be scared of the place and not want to have to go there at some point.
Right. No, I did.
Right?
Yeah, I did find it. It's like they had the arrow windows on like the outside, like the narrow slit.
Yep.
That's all facade. Like,
it's just it's not really real windows.
Yeah, so it's very interesting.
It's the design element.
So, I understand where Heather's coming from on this one.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't think there's any question about it being paranormal. There's just so much energy there, and yeah. So.
Well, good topic, Chad. Thank you. That was really cool. A lot of detail, and then one of those overlooked things as well. Like I said, I found it just by accidentally driving by it one day, realizing what it was. I'm sure there are many other people who take for granted, any of the corners they pass by of it or the walls they pass by, to take for granted that that's what it really is, and don't even, maybe folks live around and never been inside. I mean,
Right.
good for them for not needing to be inside, but just even as a tour, as a historical perspective.
Yep. So, any last thoughts on it, or are you ready to? It's depressing, to be honest with you.
Reminds me, I don't want to go to prison. I think of I always think when I say that, I always think of the line from National Treasure when Nicolas Cage is sitting on the steps of the church with the FBI guy, and he's like, I really don't want to go to prison. And the FBI guy said, well, somebody has to go to prison. It's like, you do the crime, you're going to have to do the time. So if he finds a way out, so go figure. Heroes always do. Well, great topic.
Well, thank you.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, apparently the walking audio tour is really well done. I believe it was done by a former guard. Like the audio was recorded by a former guard, if I remember correctly. And it is, if you go on their website, you can actually listen to the audio tour and download a transcript of it if you want to do that.
Cool. Okay.
And just hear what's going on. So, I'm off for this, Bert.
Yeah. We always say that. Why is it the end of every episode we're like road trip? Right?
Yeah, but this one is almost feasible.
Well, this is very feasible.
Yeah.
And here it is. This is a tie. We do the tour in the afternoon, and then we swing into Mifflin for the evening for an investigation. Done. Right?
Yep.
Or swing over to Whitehill. Or,
yep.
There's so much just right around the Metro Philly area. We can always pack it in.
Yep.
Or on the way home the next day, so
yep.
kind of thing, whatever. So.
And we could meet Todd and Carmela there. It would be perfect, Yep.
Can I get a hell? Oh, there it is. Can I get a hell yeah?
So,
well, let's figure it out, Bert. Okay, we got time and opportunity ahead of us, so let's figure something out. We can make it work.
Yep. So I'm assuming that's your fly that I keep seeing, and it's not an apparition.
It is this, and it's like a pterodactyl buzzing me every time it comes by. I'm trying not to cringe. It's like it's gonna fly in my nose or something. It's huge. It's like, if you could see it, it's huge.
Yeah, exactly.
It's not like the mosquito that buzzed me a while back. Like, that thing. Yeah.
So, all right. Well, why don't we move on to what's coming up? We got some exciting stuff to talk about here in a minute.
We really do, actually. So, investigation-wise, we just came out of the investigation Saturday night. Again, it was super awesome. Plenty of energy charged with electricity, with the storm and the rain and all that stuff. So, we're going to do a rain dance for the 13th and roll it back again. But July 13th, our ticket's still available. About a month later on August 10th, and then about a month later on August 7th. We had a conversation. A lot of us in stages had a conversation with the staff at the brewery about getting the post dates up after September 7th. They were aware they need to do it. And it's just a matter who's going to do it. But at this point, we still don't have those dates yet available. So we can't say they're going to happen because there's no reference for ticketing or viewability or anything of it.
Right.
But I'm going to tell you some cool stuff's coming. And I keep saying that week after week after week. So maybe next week or week after, we won't be here next week, but we'll get to that and get those dates posted for you and finally get them up and tickets will open up and y'all can come and hang out with us and do some really cool stuff. So soon, please be patient. And then shows. Next week, we're going to roll an encore presentation. I think I know which one it is, but since it's not listed, I'm going to hold that comment. But after that, I'm going to do 2 back-to-back episodes. The 16th is going to be the Haldeman Mansion here in Lancaster County, PA. This was our home base originally for the Jotnex Paranormal team. We got to investigate there a couple times a month for 2 years, almost 3, I guess. It was quite a while and quite a lot of fun. Really, really cool historical property. That another National Registry location that was just loaded with history. going back before colonization as well. So a lot of native lore there. So really cool episode. We're going to be joined by Jerry and Melissa Keller, our founders of Jotniks Paranormal, who lived on the property at that time as well. And they'll have some great personal experience stories. We have some pictures and cool stuff. So please join us for that one. And then after that week, we're going to jump into the Brown Mountain Lights down in North Carolina. Phenomenon has been happening there since back in the day, pre-colonial as well. The Cherokee tribes, the native tribes were reporting these lights. So it isn't us bringing electricity in. It's something that's happening. It's been going on for quite a long time. And Chad's going to take on the controversial topic of table tipping. I'm really looking forward to that one, actually, because I'd like to learn more. And my knowledge is vague and kind of gray. So bring some color into that, and hopefully we'll learn more than any of us know. And then after that, on August 6th, the Hoya Baciu Forest, which is Romania's Bermuda Triangle. So I'll leave that open for a little bit. Just to give you some teasing on that, and then more episodes after, of course. But we're running out of room on the page there, so we'll fill them in as we go. That basically what it means is once August 13th comes, it's Chad's turn, and I don't think he's selected a topic yet. That's what that really means. But I'm not saying that out loud, am I? I mean,
no. I mean, I have a few things to get through before then. So
yeah, there's a lot of time between now and then, so we'll figure it out.
So, Jamie, you want to tackle Todd's question here?
I will. So, you know how when you're out on an investigation and something goes down, but you can't explain it, it becomes just one of those things, or JOTT, right? And then Nyx is I'm going to get this wrong. It's either the Roman or the Greek goddess of night. Greek, I believe. Yeah. So just one of those things of the night is Nyx. Simple, right? We get asked that question a gazillion times, actually, and it's a neat name. It's kind of a cool thing. And if you don't know, you don't know. But yes, it's just one of those things of the night.
Yep.
All right. So here's the fun slide. Coming up, with social medias and stuff like that, you know how to find us because you're here, right? You got to us via the Facebook page, our team page, or our Jotniks Paranormal YouTube page. But coming up at the start of that 16th, July 16th episode, we are going to transition this onto Spotify as well. So opening up a whole lot of opportunity for folks, not just in our area with knowledge of us, but anybody who's searching for a paranormal show, they can find us there. There'll be a chance to rate the episodes. So, 5 stars always appreciated and hopefully earned. But with that, more to come there. And it means you don't have to rely on Facebook and YouTube. Anywhere you get Spotify, you can catch us there too. So pretty cool stuff. I'm really excited for this, actually. And Chad and I have been kind of talking about this for a while now, how to do more, how to get bigger, present more. Like we need to get bigger. I'm a little chubby anyway, so try to get thinner. But present more opportunity out with this broadcast and the show. So we really appreciate y'all for showing up with us every week, because that gave us the courage to do this in the first place, and the knowledge that someone's listening to what we're saying. And and we say this all the time. We could just sit here and talk to each other, and we do it all the time anyway. So we really appreciate you coming along for the ride each week. Hopefully, we're presenting something that you didn't know, and I can see from the comments that people leave with us, stuff too, and sharing the experiences that you may have had or the knowledge that you have of a location or experience is really cool, because we're all in this together. In the paranormal field, it's not one team doing all the work; it's all the teams doing a lot of work, and the network that it creates is massive, and it's really cool to be a part of. And we appreciate having our little tiny piece of it. So thank you all so very much.
The one caveat is it will not be live on Spotify.
Yes.
That'll be like a podcast, so it will be a day or two following the live show. So as Jamie said, sort of like streaming, you can watch us live, or you can catch the on demand a couple days later. So
yeah, it's like watch it now or tomorrow on Hulu, kind of thing. It might be 2 days later by the time it gets uploaded, but maybe by Thursday. So if we do the 16th, by the 18th, I'm sure we'll have it up and running. So. And my fingers are crossed. This is going to work. Yeah. Although, Ted, I think I can say this now after a year and something of it. I remember that first episode. Like, is this going to work? So my fingers were crossed. And uploaded, yay!
Well, in the first episode, the first couple episodes, we recorded because we were just like,
we're not live.
Yeah. So
we weren't scripted either, though. It's just we recorded it to make sure it would work. The tech we had and the StreamYard service we're using and all that stuff. We want to make sure it all looked good and it sounded right before we presented ourselves looking like buffoons. Like more than usual anyway.
Right.
And Dave Diramiti back then, still a great member of Jotnick's Paranormal, stepped away from this to pursue his other interests. He and I and Chad all sat around for months, meeting on this and planning this. And, it's like anything else when you finally go hot with something, like everything could have went wrong. And
we were lucky.
And intention, it all went right. So, and it's really Chad. He makes the magic. That's why we can't have an episode next week. He's not going to be here.
Jamie, I just pull the tech in. You do your research is amazing, and
dude, you can make us look good though. That's the point. We see each other now because of you. So, so anyway,
and I just
let me ramble through that, guys. I'm sorry if I went off path. The point is, we appreciate y'all, and we hopefully we can give you more ways to see and experience the Paranormal Lens with us.
So, and comments like this, we really appreciate it, Todd.
Thank you.
Everybody. So thank you. We're just, we're in this for the long haul, I think, Jamie.
Yeah, we're here. We're committed. And that's one of the things, and you didn't see this conversation, Chad. I reached out to Melissa, in advance of our interest in going to commitment to go to Spotify. And I said, I'm asking for permission versus forgiveness. I want you to know we want to do this. What do you think? And I said, the upside is that, we'll have a wider audience pattern. We can spread it wider. And I said, and the downside is we got to keep doing this every week. And I said, no, I'm just kidding. That's not a downside at all. It's fun.
Right.
So, it is work. There is challenges. We got to fit this into life and work and family and everybody else. And, it's not always awesome to do sometimes because of other commitments, but we find a way to make it work. And I appreciate that about you, Chad. Thank you. Every week coming up with a great topic and presentation. And here we are. We're going to go more. Yeah.
So we forgot to mention another thing at the top of the show about this past weekend. Alex, my son, was brought on the team as to be mentored and learn more about the team and how we do things. And he I think you said it before, but he is a really good investigator, and he
has a sound. He's got great instincts, and he's a good person. He's willing to learn. He's attentive. You can tell he's listening and watching, and that's how you learn. You're in the moment. You're digging into it. So, I'm really excited to have him on the team as well. Congratulations! You're a proud dad on this one. I know. Let's. How many other kids can we get on the team now? We got a few more choices, so let's keep going. I think one of them is still afraid of the dark. I'm not sure, but you know which one I mean.
So,
congratulations! I forgot all about it. Thanks.
Yep. So, I think anything else.
I don't know, but I feel like it's now a foursome. So. Guys, as honorary Jotnick's members that you are, we really should get you guys on sometime, and talk about Southern End Paranormal and all the work that you're doing down your way as well. It'll be a fun episode, and all the places you guys have been, especially your recent and extended European trips over to Ireland and such. So I'd love to hear your perspective of the old world and the haunts and the opportunities there. That is one hell of a road trip, I know. But maybe we can make it work someday too. Who knows? But that's an open invitation. And happy 4th of July to everybody. Enjoy the day. I'm personally going to think of Fort Mifflin on the 4th, and how it helped us save the effort and continue in the war and eventually lead us on to victory. So, where's my flag? Here it is.
So, all right. Well, on that note, Jamie, have a great week.
I've had too much caffeine. I'm so sorry, guys.
I need more caffeine, but it's almost bedtime, so I think I'm good. But,
I know. I'm thinking that same thing. How am I going to get to sleep tonight? No, well.
So, well, have a great week. Thank you, everybody. As we normally say, thank you. We couldn't do this without you. We really appreciate it. We look forward to what we can do in the future. And have a great week.
Yeah, I'll see you too. Take care, guys.
All right.
Good night.
Good night.